Good evening and welcome from New Canaan Library. I'm Anthony Maricola, Manager of Adult Services and Programming. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. And for tonight's program, I want to welcome Professor Kyung Hyun Kim. Professor Kim is a creative writer, a scholar, and a film producer who is currently a professor in the Department of East Asian Studies at the University of California, Irvine. He has worked with internationally renowned directors such as Hong Sang-soo, Lee Chang-dong, and Martin Scorsese, and also with American film producers Jason Blum and Steven Schneider. Professor Kim is author of Virtual Hallyu, Korean Cinema of the Global Era, The Remasculinization of Korean Cinema, Hegemonic Mimicry, Korean Popular Culture of the 21st Century, all of them published by Duke University Press, and a Korean language novel entitled In Search of Lost G. Tonight he will speak on the film Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho, to probe the reasons why it became one of the most successful films ever made outside of Hollywood. If you have professors for Professor Kim, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. Professor Kim, welcome and thank you so much for being with us tonight. The virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you. And as the virtual flows go, I'm going to have to share screen. Give me a minute here. Okay, do you see the slide? I'm assuming that you can see the slide. Yes?
Yes, I see the slide.
Okay.
It looks like it might be in presentation mode. Are you using double two monitors?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's showing the one that has the preview on it.
Oh, let me see if I can. Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you for the nice introduction. Thank you for Kathy for organizing the event. And I'm honored to be speaking with you today on my really favorite film that really has become a favorite film, although it's only been 2 years since its release. And as a film historian, I shouldn't necessarily say, okay, you know, a film that is from 2019 is now my favorite film, but it really is. And one of the reasons why I like the film so much is because this is, you know, fourth or fifth talk that I'm giving on the topic of Parasite. And, you know, before the film became big as it has, you know, I was requested by various media to give interviews on the film. Ever since it was nominated for Academy Awards. And just to give you a little anecdotal, a funny story, every time I was called by all kinds of media, New York Times, BBC, you know, all, you know, worldwide media that was really intrigued by the film and the potential for success at the Academy Awards. And every time a journalist would ask me, you know, what do you think the chances are of it actually winning a Best Picture award? And I would say, oh, you know, next to none. There's absolutely no way that the movie would actually even have a chance of winning a Best Picture award, you know, or Director's award. And I was proven wrong each and every step of the way. So it's a story that will probably follow me, you know, for the rest of my life. And I like talking about this film because every time I had to give a talk in Korean cinema previously, and I've been doing this job introducing and discussing Korean films for the past 25 years, ever since I actually decided that I would write a dissertation on Korean cinema. When I was a USC film student, you know, back in mid-1990s. So, you know, almost, wow, 30 years ago. It would just take me time to actually prep the talk, to contextualize or introduce a particular film that I would be discussing, because not many people, whether I be at, you know, university setting, community setting, any kind of setting that I would actually be invited to give a talk in Korean cinema, I would have to spend at least 15, 20 minutes to warm the crowd, if you will, to contextualize, to give you a synopsis of the film. And this is one film I feel that you're here because you have watched it already, or else the chances are you probably wouldn't be here. It's so widely viewed all across the world. So it's given me a sense of satisfaction and, you know, gratification. Oh, this is, I don't have to spend a lot of time to discuss, you know, the synopsis or the storyline and the plot lines and the characters of the movie. And instead, I can just talk about some of the thematics that I think are interesting about the film, because that's where I really want to go as soon as I can. Now, just to give you an idea of where Bong Joon-ho is, I took this photo, you know, 2008, and he is standing right next to the two of his colleagues in what I would call New Korean Cinema movement that came about in the turn of the century. So he was already quite famous film director in film festival circuit, probably not in the US, but European film festivals had honored him, recognized him for his achievements. So on the right with a perm there, or he doesn't have a perm there. That's his natural hair but I always make fun of him for having a perm there, because it's not, it's actually very curly for Korean. In the middle is Park Chan-wook, slightly older than him. Also one of the, you know, main representatives of the New Korean cinema. And on the left is Lee Chang-dong, who also has made a lot of films, Peppermint Candy, Secret Sunshine, being some of his films that made him quite famous. And, you know, I mean, all of them, even at that time, were sort of routine regulars, not only in European art film circuit, but also our house distribution that would make it to the Lamneys of the US and Sundances of the US, so to speak. And how did they get here? I was very drawn to Bong Joon-ho's family history, just because not many people, you know his family history, but very unique family history. This is his actual maternal grandfather on the mother's side. In the middle is his grandfather. His name is Park Tae-won. And I didn't know actually the connection between the two until much, much later. But I've been reading Park Tae-won novels and short stories since I was, you know, 25. I've been a big fan. He used to be referred to as Korean James Joyce. He would try to write about, you know, mundane sense of everyday word plays that are particular in the modern consciousness of Korean language. And he was, you know, along with these other writers pictured here, he used to be participant of a very interesting landmark modernist literary group that was called Group of Nine, Guinwe. And somebody who is just really, really pivotal in terms of a modernist movement, literary modernist movement in Korea during the Japanese colonial era. And what happened to him was actually pretty tragic, because dramatic, to say the least. and hopefully I can talk about this in relation to Parasite a little bit later on. But what happened to Park Tae-won is Bong Joon-ho's grandfather, maternal grandfather, is that it affected, as many modernists of that era, 1920s and 1930s, intellectuals of that era, he had become a socialist, and he had chosen not South Korea during the tumultuous period of 1940s and 1950s, when Korea was in a civil war and then also divided between communist North and capitalist South. He chose not capitalist South, but communist North, and the effect of the North became actually really a famous writer in North Korea, serving Kim Il-sung, the dictator of North Korea at that particular time. Estranged this from his family. He left his almost entire family, his wife and 3 children, in South Korea. And out of one of the daughters that he left behind was given birth, Bong Joon-ho. And during the question and answer period, I will go through, more time. His dramatic, Bong Joon-ho's dramatic family history, because apparently Park Tae-won, his maternal grandfather, had married another North Korean woman while in North Korea in the 50s and 60s, and then had given birth to several children. So they were very curious, when there were some family reunions that took place between Park Tae-won's family in North Korea and Park Tae-won's family in South Korea, including Bong Joon-ho. They were North Koreans were genuinely interested in the worldwide famous filmmaker that Bong Joon-ho had become. Anyway, so all of these pictures declare a sense of, I don't know. I mean, I've chosen these pictures, I guess. Not only are they, pictures of famous people, this one a filmmaker, and this one, literary people, writers in Korea from 100 years ago. They give you a sense of, again, Koreans are, including even Bong Joon-ho, they rarely laugh. They're so stoic and reserved and restraining their emotions. And obviously time frame during the Japanese colonial era, there's not much sense in laughing. Comedy at the time had to be repressed, and laughter in certain ways had to be repressed because of the social climate of the day, and that carried over in South Korea as well as North Korea. Very little to laugh about, especially during the South Korean military dictatorship that actually dominated South Korea in the 60s, 70s, and 80s as well. But maybe this is part of the reason why, Bong Joon-ho still, despite the fact that he grew up in the dark, grim background of 1980s, spent his formative youth, during the South Korea's military dictatorship in the 80s. This is where he actually is able to grab some energy, comic energy, because his father, Bong Sang-gyun, a graphic designer, probably one of the most famous graphic designer in all of South Korea. He's and you can, I know you probably have hard time making out Korean Hangul phonetics, but Korean alphabet here is Coca-Cola, and this was and it still remains. This is his design of Coca-Cola, the worldwide famous emblem brand that he had Koreanized and still is used in Coca-Cola cans in Korea. And Bong Sang-gyun was a very brilliant, graphic designer. He was actually unfortunately repressed because his father-in-law then, right, was was a very famous communist who defected to North Korea, and from the viewpoint of South Korean authorities, he's somebody who should be kept an eye on, right? He should be kept being monitored and surveyed, for he could be a communist sympathizer, and yet a person that in all of the pictures that I could find, who really had this kind of generous laugh. And not an ounce of this pessimism. I've been persecuted. My life sucks because I am forever on the blacklist by the South Korean authorities for my father-in-law, not somebody even I'm blood related to. Father-in-law is tied to North Korean regime. Now, that's the stage for me to talk about Parasite. What is the movie about? And one question that I always ask in the context of the film, any film that is, not just Parasite, is let's think about the genre of the film. And if it's a genre film, what kind of genre is it? And here already asking this question, I feel is a film that is not simple, easy to answer, a question on, what kind of genre it is actually appropriating. And if at all, because it certainly is a commercial genre film, but it has many aspects and elements of art house film that asks, I think, a difficult question. And even when it's actually appropriating genre impulses or elements, it's trying to codify and recodify, right? Several of them: comedy, thriller, romantic melodrama, and it kind of skips around. So I think it's an interesting film that way. And we'll get back to this question a little bit later on, where it actually does land, because I think it is very interesting, the way it plays, redeploys genre elements, and then diffuses them at the end for the purpose of maybe telling a story that really becomes, at the end of the day, a modernist art film. And in thinking about one particular genre of that it borrows from, I was really thinking that it has a strong connection to American comment comedy and the tradition of American comedies that feature African American stars. And we go back to 1980s Trading Places, Eddie Murphy switching places, really Prince and the Pauper story. Eddie Murphy, black, poor, trading places with Dan Aykroyd, who is filthy, Wall Street rich. The tradition of code switching continues. I think throughout you see plethora of American, again, comedies featuring black stars in this kind of mode, all the way to Get Hard, recent film, Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart, kind of trading places where, Will Ferrell, who is filthy rich, all of a sudden is conned into being poor, and he has to consult, Kevin Hart to switch, find his place back. These films, in some ways, to me, is important in the tradition of Korean comedy. Although race is not part of the elements that Parasite deals with, it definitely borrows a sense of, okay, these are people who are not just poor, the Kim family, who is the center of our focus from the very beginning till the end, is a story about, through the art of deception, whether they can actually advance. It may not exactly be a code switching, or yes, it is. They have to act as if they're above their status, right? They have to conceal the fact yes, they're in the service industry. They are chauffeurs, they're maids, they are tutors, servicing the very wealthy white folks. But they have to use the art of deception to raise their stakes a little bit, lie about their diplomas, lie about their experience, job experience, lie about their kinship, kind of network that has enabled them to gain their job. So there is a code switching, in other words, going on. And I feel as if one thing has to be convinced to the audiences. And in the American tradition of a common comedies using African-American characters, it's very clear to me that the motivation here is that they're not just poor. Again, they're Black poor, right? The system has actually stripped them away of the possibility for them to enjoy equal opportunity to succeed in life. And that's one of the reasons why they can actually sneak around, cheat a little bit, lie about their background a little bit. And we have to be convinced that that's going to be okay. It's because it's not fair already that the cards are stacked against them. And I feel as if in this film, Parasite, because it is so permanent, you get a permanent sense of a neoliberal capitalism that has created a polarization of classes. And there's no way that the Kim family, the dirt poor family, actually had their same stack of cards as with the Park family, which is a rich family, the mansion that they are actually venture encroach upon. That is going to be okay if they lie, cheat, manufacture kind of fake counterfeit degrees. And so the central question, and it's treated as a comedy, it's a social comedy, but definitely a comedy. The film asked, I think, from the very get-go, will Ki-Jung, his sister, will they be able to advance their plan, successfully, execute their plan? So the code switching remains intact, and they won't get busted. In the American comedies, mind you, they are very successful, right? They do. There's some challenges. There's some conflict that gets thrown out. It's not going to be that easy, and yet they're able to overcome, right, the odds and achieve success. And in the Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy film, as well as Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart film, they're equally, the Black, white, doesn't matter, rich, poor, doesn't matter. You're all able to achieve equal success. It's a kind of fantasy fulfillment, a closure that they actually aim for, and they're indeed successful. Here in this film, we're not too sure whether they'll be able to achieve that kind of success. Again, this is just another slide. The code switching, or in other words, the game of pretend, art of deception. We're allowing them to actually perform it out because we sympathize them, we empathize them. Hey, you guys deserve another shot at this, right? And that's the only reason for else why I watch the film in the first place, or you're getting convinced or persuaded that they're likable characters. And so it's just another way of saying, okay, we have given them, we have allowed them to play out the game of pretend, right? We understand that, again, the cards that are stacked against them, more or less permanent. They're not just poor, but they're digital poor, as you can actually see in this shot. The opening shot is actually brilliant. It's not exactly a starvation. that they suffer from. It's not as if, they'll die next day for lack of food, but, lack of signal, Wi-Fi signal is just as being miserable and unjust in today's society. So we allow them to, hey, if they're stealing a little bit from a cafe across the street for free Wi-Fi, so go ahead, right? We allow them to play along, right? To give them a sense of credibility as the story progresses. And each and every lie kind of, balloons themselves to a point of no return. Now, I've established the fact that, yes, common comedy genre is important, a facet to the movie Parasite, but there are more reasons why I think, the film is interesting. And some of you may have thought about this already, but I'm gonna probably spell it out more, in a more defined way, because that's my job, to be analytical. The first thing is a sense of meticulous, right? Almost perverse kind of space that the film engenders. And I feel the film is brilliant and very smart in reconceptualizing space. And space, it becomes a theme in and of itself. Two, post-metaphorical symbolism. And I feel as if this is also very important in a sense of giving it a modernist / maybe pushing it the boundary a little bit to postmodernist, so that it becomes a little bit shuffling of the signifiers to a point where, you're not completely satisfied with a space of metaphors, okay? A world of metaphors, because that would be too, I don't know, realism driven kind of a movie. And certainly Bong Joon-ho is not satisfied in doing so. And then three, anti-melodramatic or genre ending that the film actually aims for. What does that mean? How does that push the film, as I talked about, away from commercial genre film and into the realm of more art film, right? Now, let's go back to the first point that I tried to establish, which is space. And the space, again, without over-explaining, without overemphasizing, I think it really tries to deliver a cinematic space within the cinematic space. Okay, frame within the frame is continually, right? Mise en scène, if you will, like a putting into the scene measure that the film will try to establish. Here, the opening scene during the opening credit scene, you get a sense of, okay, even though they're really, really poor and they live in a basement, they do get a lot of theater, looking out into the window. Yeah, it's small. It's the scenes are not very peaceful. There's a lot of fight. There's a guy gets drunk all the time and urinating. And at one point, Ki-jung, the sister, is actually like recording, even on the cell phone, what is happening to that cinematic space within their cinematic space. So there's actually interplay, social media, cinematization of the space that is triangulating spaces, breaking down spaces in an interesting way, which is contrasted against this space, right? Which is all about establishing, not like the other space, the poor people space, which is filled with violence, filled with yuckiness, filled with threat of a certain kind of encroachment of the personal. I don't like you peeing, right next to our window, but how do we stop it? Seems to be one of the concerns, right? The Kim family has. In Park Family Mansion, obviously you can achieve a sense of the opposite, serene, almost an idyllic, right? Kind of a natural, non-violent, harmonious kind of a space where you're overlooking a very placid sense of, Western meets Japanese garden, right? And this space is used quite a bit. Also, what this film also tries to establish a sense of a mourning, sense of melancholia of an era that has been more or less finished, and pays homage to the Bauhaus interior design. And you can tell, the simplistic geometric shapes that the, Walter Gropius, Eric Diekman, right? The designers of Bauhaus had established, so that you can see the, triangle, the chairs, right? Also, I believe, right? Rearranging of the geometric spaces, also revealing, right? Being self-conscious of the material that is concrete. It doesn't like try to varnish or coat it with anything. That the Bauhaus, artists and architects had envisioned to move space away from the domain of aristocrats, which is all about the excessive, ornamental kind of things. This is minimalist. That the house had envisioned for the a coming of the middle class, away from, again, aristocratic class of the Europeans at the time, but it breeds a certain kind of, again, I think, tragedy in and of itself of the use of the space, because this has been hijacked by another emerging, right, bourgeois class that is the Parks, who are extremely wealthy, capitalists, and they have bought the house and they've appropriated what used to be basically socialist, utopian dream. And I don't think I have time to go into other kind of forms of space, the perverse spaces that Bong Joon-ho materializes, but I'd be happy to talk about how he's, again, mise-en-scène, the cinematography, and the ways in which he actually figures a foreground, background, and shuffling of the interior versus exterior, mind versus the landscape, is not unlike the ways in which postmodern, again, cinematography that the Coen brothers have favored and preferred over the years, in reestablishing or recapturing the creepiness of a happy, kind of even pastoral landscapes. Okay, and this is not from Parasite, but from Memories of Murder, which is his other great film that I think you should all go see if you haven't watched it just yet. And so next, I want to talk about the post-metaphoric metaphors, which to me is very fun. Is, I think, absolutely important. All those symbolisms that actually do get mentioned in the film, yet they are less than fulfilling. Okay. For instance, for those of you who've seen the film, and I'm sure you have, many of you, most of you, if not all of you, the mineral stone, what is called susok in Korean, it makes its appearance in the beginning of the film. It's Kyu's friend who brings it to their home. Kyu, toward the end of the movie, he saves it when the house gets flooded. And at the end of the film, toward the end of the film, he tries to kill, right? Not the capitalist, mind you, not Mr. Park, his employer, but the parasitic, right? Hider in the bunker, Mukbang. He tries to kill him with it. He is unsuccessful, and then instead almost gets killed himself with it. The mineral stone. What does that mean? Is it, if it was something like, a straightforward metaphor, look, right? Something like hammer and a sickle, if you will. Hammer, symbolizing, right, being metaphor of the industrial working class, and sickle being a symbol for the farmer peasant, resistance against the bourgeoisie or the capitalist. Together they make up a metaphor of communism. Obviously, a lot of communist flags still around the world has the emblem of a hammer sickle. It's not. By establishing as if it's a metaphor, it occupies an important place of a certain kind of a weapon, arsenal. But once you try to identify exactly and define it exactly how it stands as a metaphor, it fails. For Bong Joon-ho, it doesn't want us to, again, for us to be satisfied with one-to-one kind of an exchange. Here is a stone, and the other is class struggle or something like that. Okay, for the meaning of that's what it stands for. Because once you define it against that, you fail, because that, I don't think, is exactly the answer. Given that supplies the agency of the mineral stone, it actually aims further than that, and therefore circulates in this kind of, chain of signifiers, if you will, that keeps rotating and rotating, that becomes slippery without us being pinned down to one satisfying, a definition or a meaning. And they can only discuss it, right? And it gives us a point of contemplation. What did it mean? Did it mean anything? Why is it there? When we can only speculate it as a symbolism that really hasn't got a satisfying answer when we try to search for a single unified meaning behind it, which is what postmodern signifiers usually try to dictate. But we know definitely it's important. They talk about this quite a bit. Another post-metaphoric signifier could be summed up in the metaphor of the cake. And cake to me is, maybe less significant than the signifier of the mineral rock, but still very important. It is able to give trauma and also take away trauma. It serves dual function. Trauma recovery cake is precisely what Mrs. Park actually calls it, which Tazong, her son, the bratty little boy, the rich boy, had gotten his original trauma from. We know that it wasn't the cake that gave him trauma. It was actually the Mukbang, who was hiding in the bunker. They gave him trauma, but nevertheless, it has an important function. The food here in this instance, having to actually serve both ways, one that could traumatize and cure the patient, is what I was kind of drawn to. Again, satisfying in my ability to connect the dots between, again, Parasite and the ways in which it achieves sliding signifiers of of a emblematic significations. I originally had thought that I would go more into the food because I think that, you know, he's eating a melon here, but peach also is to me quite important, and there's many references to the food. It's a film that does serve a very important function of becoming almost a landmark film that makes social commentaries about the film, about food in many different ways. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I think the film was so successful around the world, because it provides comedy, not only because of the, you know, art of deception and the code switching and those things, but because of the ways in which, you know, food is marked and characterized in position. Also, like the cake, you know, remember peach is a very important symbol. Peach is important in the context of the East Asian tradition. The Koreans as well as Chinese and Japanese, you call utopia. In the West, they renamed the Shangri-La, but that comes from a land of peach trees. And so peach has always been associated with utopia or paradise in the you know, traditional East Asian sensibility. However, that's not what Bong Joon-ho is just satisfied with. Oh, peach is a great fruit. It's a delicious fruit. It's a fruit of the rich, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it gives you so much, you know, sensual satisfaction. The minute you have that kind of a meaning associated with it and you're satisfied with it, boom, you know, it actually says there is, you know, allergies associated with the, you know, the little hairs on the coat of a peach. I never knew that any allergy was associated with this, but it's true there, and I had to look it up. Bong Joon-ho understood that, hey, it's a beautiful, delicious, sensual, sexual fruit, as well as it being poison, right? And so dual way, again, is being used to serve a purpose of post-metaphoric, again, allegory that the film is trying to achieve throughout the course of the plot line. And then at the end, I know I've run out of time, but just wanted to go back to what I actually tried to fulfill. Well, is the film genre film or is it not a genre film? Well, if you just look at the ending, the reconciliation certainly does not take place. All of those questions that we started asking as if it's a genre film, it doesn't fulfill itself, right? Will the poor people be able to establish their homes, you know, in the rich people's house, able to break in and successfully become co-sharer of this wealth? No, you know, it ends in the violence. All that dream and paradise, maybe imagine, doesn't happen. Ain't gonna happen for the Kim family. Will the poor boy, I think that in terms of romantic, melodramatic kind of possibilities, you also had Kyu trying to vie, right, to earn the love of the rich girl, you know, and the entire family. And that's one of the scenes that I think, you know, comedy, tragedy, right, before they get busted. Can I continue this act of pretend so that I can actually be betrothed to the girl, to the wealthy girl? And if this was, again, right, genre film that does fulfill all the conventions, despite the odds, I think Kiwoo would have been able to find success in his romance, but that gets thwarted. I mean, there's, you know, I think we never find out about the girl, but, you know, her whereabouts at the end of the movie, but we know clearly that wasn't going to happen, right? It's a cynical sense of, again, reality that the film actually places us at the end of the story. Instead, now it's actually the nightmare is even worse. They began at a certain place in society. Now the sister gone, father in prison. He has occupied, right, the space of Mukbang. Mukbang's dead, but now it's the father who's going to be the parasite, and he gets locked up. And the eternal kind of, recurrence it repeats itself to a point where we actually come back to the circle. This time it's worse position than you had began. So all of those genre fulfillments that we thought were promised, maybe if it was going to be a commercial genre film, does have a way of dissipating at the end of the movie, and voila, I think you have a really bleak sense of an ending where nothing really did materialize, and we really can't find anywhere for hope or optimism. And this, to me, I didn't really talk about it in the wider context of Korean cinema, but this, to me, reinscribes the end of the talk where I feel that it has been extremely commonplace in the traditional Korean cinema, as well as most recently in the drama series Squid Game. Yes, you have a winner at the end, but is he really a winner? That kind of, oh, sorry, I must have given away spoiler here to a certain degree. The path toward being good is just really, really impossible one. In American movies, and I always felt, the path toward being good is so simple. Just do the good thing and you'll be okay, because there are enough villains out there that you can actually kill or overcome. But in the Korean, again, sensibility, as well as in Parasite, it's always been that declaration of good and evil, and the triumph that you expect of good over the evil. Well, it's just so darn difficult to achieve one, is a sense that you get at the end of the movie. And hey, despite the fact that it does thwart or underwhelm our expectations in that way, it did extremely well, leaving us a kind of a space here in our emotions that maybe even the general mass audiences out there are prepared for a nuanced film like this. So I felt good, not only the way in which it had come to this country or worldwide, but it had found success pretty much everywhere it went. All right, thank you. I'm going to stop share. Hello?
Hey, Professor.
Yeah.
So we do have some questions here. So there's one from Quentin Moore. Do you know or surmise that the current North Korean leadership has seen Parasite? I'm guessing yes, but I'm sure you know better than I.
No, I don't. I don't know whether the current leadership has seen Parasite. I would think Kim Jong-un probably has seen it, but beyond him, I don't know. Just to back up on the anecdotal stuff that I actually had mentioned about North Korean family members of Bong Joon-ho becoming curious about the grandson of Park Tae-won. Park Tae-won, again, the grandfather is not only famous in South Korea but in North Korea as well. The last time I heard it was like 10 years ago when they had a reunion. So this was well before, again, the Parasite. And they were just really curious. And then they were interested in getting DVDs of Bong Joon-ho films. So beyond that, I'm not too sure. But thank you for the question.
Now, there's a second part to that question. What is Bong Joon-ho's political philosophy, especially as it relates to North Korean, South Korean relations?
Oh, I think he wants peace. He wants more contact, but personally, I think he's been a little hurt because, again, he himself didn't face any persecution himself, but his father and mother, because of their association with the North Korean communist writer that his grandfather was, had to go underground, so to speak, and hide the fact that they actually have a very famous, communist writer in their family. And this scarred him, when he was growing up. Sorry. And now he is behind him. I mean, he's my age. We're both 50. and he might he is intrigued by North Korea, but his grandfather has passed away long ago, and he hasn't really established a lot of relationship and friendship over with North Koreans over the years. So who knows? But I'll try to ask him next time I meet him.
So our next question asks, Parasite was well received here in the US. How was it received in Korea, especially in regard to the social commentary?
Oh, very well. Though it's kind of funny. I think Parasite had been more successful overseas, especially with all the jokes. I've seen the movie in movie theater. This was before COVID. I've seen the movie in movie theaters in South Korea a couple of times. I saw the movie here in Los Angeles, in Irvine, Southern California, a couple of times. And Southern California audience, I can't speak for the entire US, but American audiences that I was able to find, watching the film together, respond to the film a lot better than the Korean audiences. And that got me thinking a little bit. I think part of it is Bong Joon-ho's writing style. He actually has a lot of jokes that are intended for, overseas audiences. So, for instance, Mrs. Park, the woman, frazzled, rich wife. She speaks a lot of times in English, right? A lot of the phrasing. So when Ki-jung, the tutor, our tutor, talks about, remember, this is, your son may suffer from schizophrenia, and as they say the word in English, schizophrenia, not the Korean word for it, although there is a Korean word for schizophrenia. She intentionally uses the English word, and then she responds, as you always do, oh, prinya. Once that dialogue is performed, the reaction in the American movie theater audiences was overwhelmingly very positive. But for a Korean audience, the joke simply just doesn't work. How many Koreans out there actually know what schizophrenia means, or the wordplay on schizophrenia? So I feel that Bong Joon-ho, despite the fact that it's definitely a social commentary about Korea or worldwide problem with polarization of classes and neoliberal capitalism, I feel it's geared to more of a non-Korean audiences in many ways, and So I felt it fared better. I felt more at home in some strange way watching the movie with American audiences.
Our next question asks, what do you think the film says about the dangers of capitalism and consumer culture in Korea and worldwide?
Well, I mean, this is it's a tough question. Listen, I don't think the film is about here is the perilous, dangers of capitalism and the world, how the system divides people into two classes, haves and have-nots, and it's gotten to a point where it's no longer a battle between haves and have-nots, but between have-nots and have-nots. And so therefore you should go out and become all Marxists and start waving a copy of Communist Manifesto. I don't think the movie does do that, but I feel, and it's the same kind of reaction I had in watching Squid Game, because there's so many parallels that you can actually draw between Parasite and Squid Game. It's about a critique of society that has become, I mean, literally, right, cutthroat. In terms of the ways in which it forces you to play this game of competition, and it's poor people actually, right, competing against poor people, whereas the wealthy are secluded from this game everybody else has to play. They're protected from that game. It does, I think, in some ways, provide talking points, and that's the only thing that I think one can hope for this day and age, because when we were younger, I think 30 years ago, I think utopian projections beyond capitalism were a lot more productive. I don't think it's like that anymore, for better or for worse. Yeah.
The next question asks, what are your other favorite recent Korean films?
Well, just like any other place in the world, the production of film had been really slow, and the release of even the films that they had made been really, really slow there. So they're actually like, over the last 2 years, just been gluttony of just films that just get sit in cans. But I recently saw Hummingbird, which is made by a woman filmmaker, and I believe it was distributed here as well, pretty widely for a movie that opened during the pandemic, and that spoke to me a lot, and I was really touched by the film, which goes back in recent Korean history. I think it depicts a 1990s Korea from the viewpoint of a young girl, and to me that was a very good film. And as I talked about, Burning by Lee Chang-dong, which also was made 3-4 years ago, starring Steve Yeun, and that was a very good movie. It's nice to see Steve Yeun, like speaking Korean. Hong Sang-soo movies, although he makes smaller films, are my favorites. Anything Hong Sang-soo makes, I watch him, with great delight. So,
all right. So our final question, and
this
one's a little, yeah, and this one is a little different. Would you be able to talk about the Dragon Motors riot from Squid Game?
Dragon Motors riot. What the hell is that? Do you know? Which episode is that?
I'm gonna do a quick search.
Which episode is that? Dragon Motors. Where is the Dragon Motors?
It says a real-life auto factory riot referenced in Squid Game.
Oh yeah. 쌍용 자동차. All right, no. No, it's so somebody actually yeah, no, Kyun in Squid Game, the main protagonist actually is traumatized, right? I mean, the guy is a problem, and the reason why he became so, like scum of the society is not because he is, he is a scumbag to begin with, but because he is he over cares actually, right? That's his problem, you know. And you shouldn't care as much in a cutthroat, again, competitive capitalist society. And there is a flashback sequence where his wife blames him for not being at her bedside when she was pregnant and was about to give birth, right? And he says, well, the reason why I couldn't be with you was because I was trying to treat my friend, right, who had gotten really, really badly injured in this demonstration. And that demonstration later on, we find out it's a Sangyong Motors demonstration. I think it's like 2008, 2009, like 12, 14 years ago, when it was rather a militant union auto worker strike, and Kyun supposedly putatively was part of that strike, and he talks about that in his real factual, right, unfortunate history where so many workers got hurt or even I think got killed, overreaction by the government to break up that strike.
Professor Kim, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for speaking with us this evening. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure. Any question you may have that's lingering on, those of you who may have not had the opportunity, I'm easily Googleable, if that's even a word. And just email me, kyunghk@uci.edu. I respond pretty much to all my emails. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you everybody for attending. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay.